Hello and welcome to another episode of Green Time. I'm your host, John Hickey from the Missouri Sierra Club. And on today's episode, we're going to watch a documentary about a tar sands pipeline that's being built across the state of Missouri. The documentary is called From the Pipeline by Caitlin Zera, and I think you'll enjoy it. Let's take a look.
Regular visitors to our website, stlpublicradio.org, have been reading about an oil pipeline under construction from northern Illinois to Oklahoma, which cuts a wide swath through Missouri. No, it is not the much-discussed and stymied Keystone Pipeline from Canada through the U.S.
Here we see that there's all this controversy around Keystone XL. Well, guess what? There's an entire web of pipelines that are being converted, built, all across the U.S.
I talked to people who were very against the Keystone Pipeline. They were aware of that, but they didn't know that this one was going right through their neighborhood.
We are the people. We are united. We will build this pipeline. We are the people. We are united. We will let you build this pipeline. One. Keystone Pipeline.
Construction on this project began on this farm in September. First notice that I received was by letter, I think, that they were going to be coming through. This farm was bought by my father in the 1950s, early 1950s, and so it's been in the family since that time. In 1951, there was a pipeline put through on this property, and they're using that agreement, part of that agreement, in negotiating and extending the easement and widening the easement for this second pipeline that's gone through. I mean, that we still retain ownership of the property, but they have the right to use the property for a specific use, and in this case, for the installation of a pipeline for hauling petroleum products.
This ground is all owned by our families, my family. We've actually are a century farm. We've been here since my grandparents started in 1907, so we've been here a little over 100 years, so we've been around a long time. Well, actually, the first time that we heard about it was when governor was going through the state of Missouri, talking to the communities about the pipeline coming through and the impact on the local economies and the jobs that it was going to create. But we had no knowledge of it until then. And of course, shortly after that, then the pipeline company started contacting landowners about them coming through. We have about 2 miles of it across our property. No, it comes through wherever, just comes straight on through. So yeah, it does cross several creeks and waterways and ditches.
The land agent called me one day and said that he had contracts for me and proposals that he wanted to submit to me. And he left those. I was not here at the time, but he left those for me. I got them, and within about 2 days or 3, I got a letter in the mail that said that Enbridge was in the process of moving forward with this project, and that if we didn't accept the offer presented, that they would have to take alternative measures. on that. My main concern was their attitude, but also reflected in this letter, but also, I don't know, they just, I was just a little upset about it. You know, I just didn't think that the contracts that they were offering and the easements that they were wanting us to sign was in favor at all in supporting the landowners. Everything was in favor of Enbridge Corporation, you know, pipeline, and it has to be something that I felt like needed to be fair and equitable for all concerned. And the contracts that were given to us and that they wanted us to sign was not fair and equitable, in my opinion.
I'd heard about the spill in Kalamazoo, and then I'd heard about the Mayflower spill in Arkansas. That was last spring. And when I saw that so many of the residents didn't know that that pipeline was even underground, right near their homes, I started looking into it a little and saw that we had one. Not only did we have an old one going through, but they were going to put a new one in. And I was afraid that it would be tar sands. And so I contacted the company, and they confirmed right away that they didn't like the term tar sands, but they said that they were going to be putting some of that through there. My city, Adrian, draws water from this river for our drinking water, and our pump is under the surface. The bigger concern is that this tar sands is going to be flowing through here hot and heavy, and if there's a spill, the first thing we're probably going to know about it is that the river is polluted.
When you think about an underground pipeline that goes under rivers, one of the things about tar sands that's really interesting is that it doesn't really float. If there were a spill, say, under the Missouri River or under the Mississippi River, it may take quite some time before we necessarily realize that it's spilling. You know, and to downplay the risk on this is foolish, because we're building so many different pipelines crossing so many major water bodies. It's not if we have a spill, it's when. All biodiversity kind of centers around water, but land and water are artificially separated. You know, we consider them separately, but they coexist and are reliant on one another.
I got on the city council originally because the water production was, we had built a new plant, and there was an agreement with the rural water district that was expiring that we sell water to, and they were looking at buying water elsewhere, and I really wanted to see us continue to work together as a community to provide lots of good, clean water to our citizens. So it's been a big priority for me, the water, because without water, a city cannot survive. There are about 1,600 people in Adrian, and probably about that many again that buy through the rural water district.
If there were a break and it dumped oil in our water supply, you know, how long will it take them to clean it up? We wanted them to know how much water we had in reservoir storage. And basically they told us that the new water line, or the new oil line's going 30 feet under the Grand River, and the old one that's been there for 50-some years is right on the bottom of the river. It has never leaked. We're convinced that we're not at any risk any more than we were before.
Well, once I did get the city council at least a little bit concerned about it, we were able to schedule Enbridge to come speak to our council, and they agreed to take some steps. They did sort of a drill where they walked through the steps that they would take in the event of a spill. That was something I'd requested and that they didn't offer until we kind of leaned on them a little bit to get them to do that.
We were notified that it was coming through, and they would be communicating with the city police department and fire department on possible emergencies and how to handle them and how to work with them, and that's it.
I guess what scares me the most is what happened in Michigan. It was a spill onto a river. It wasn't detected. It hasn't been cleaned up completely.
A huge slick, about 877,000 gallons of oil have spilled out into the creek here near the Kalamazoo River. They've just declared a state of emergency here in Calhoun County, and I spoke with an official with the state, and they say this may be the worst oil spill ever in the Midwest.
They've lost residents. They've lost businesses. That place will never be the same. And the company just repairs the pipeline and keeps going.
Told that there's very toxic chemicals in this oil. Obviously, oil is very dangerous anyway, but I'm told that the chemicals in here are very, very dangerous, and that folks in the area should be very careful if they're, nearby it, approaching it, coming here to look at it. It's not a good idea to get close by.
The Army Corps gave a permit that we feel was the wrong sort of permit for this pipeline. Because this pipeline covers so many waterways and so many sensitive areas, it should have been subject to a much more vigorous environmental review. The Army Corps gave them a sort of permit that's supposed to be given for very small projects that don't require much review, and that's an inappropriate permit for this project.
Yeah, I gave a statement to the Sierra Club for their standing documents on that Permit 12 lawsuit, but as you know, that didn't go anywhere. Unfortunately, the environmental regulations don't do a whole lot, at least when it comes to pipelines. The pipelines are regulated by the Pipeline Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, which is part of the Department of Transportation. So it's a transportation issue. It's not an environmental issue when the state government looks at it.
This is all my property right here. And, I said a while ago it's low ground. I'm developing wetlands. You can see the water in here, and I'm developing it for hunting and for wildlife and waterfowl primarily. The summer. There's a lot of birds that migrate through. Waterfowl is ones mostly, but there's cranes and swans and pelicans. They stop at these wetlands, like down there in my bottoms, and there's a great big wetland down here in the bottom called Grand Pass Wildlife Area. It's several thousand acres of water, and they fly in there. Because the reason they put all this down planking is because this is wetlands, classified as wetlands, and environmentalists, DNR, Department of Natural Resources, made them do it to protect that. I was born and raised here, basically, on this farm, and have been around it all my life. I like where it's located. I like this part of the state of Missouri. There's close to a mile right here on this farm right here, and on my brother's farm, he has maybe just a little bit over a mile.
Coming through, it hasn't been much of an issue. Of course, it disturbs the ground, and we're still not sure how long it's going to take the ground to get back into production. As it was coming through, of course, it took all our crop out last fall. We didn't harvest any crop in this area because they came through right before harvest. This ground will be ready to plant by the time it's planting time. Like I say, there's a few terraces that have to be fixed yet, but otherwise we'll plant a crop there this year.
What's left to be done on this project basically is just the restoration of it. They've got to come in and clean up. I don't anticipate being able to grow crops on it during the year of 2014. I just don't think the ground will be prepared for that, and the project won't be done by that time.
I think it's I don't know that it has any impact agriculturally other than, like I said, it could be, depending on how long it takes this ground to get back into full production again. But I don't think any other consequences or anything like that.
Enbridge is paying a percentage of payment for crop loss. I think relations have been pretty good overall with Enbridge, as far as the project's concerned. Once we formed a coalition and started that negotiation, I think it improved considerably. Say that there's going to be some major impact once oil's flowing through that line, I don't think it will have any impact, or very minimal impact. Well, it's my understanding that the county is going to make a large sum of money annually off of the transportation of oil through this pipeline. And so economically, I think it's going to be a benefit to the county in the long run to get that tax revenue. One thing I am disappointed in is that when Enbridge first came into the county and they insinuated that there would be a real economic boost for the county during the process of construction. I have not seen that at the level that I hoped for,
Environmental, I see zero. Economics, it's really been good for the area. Everybody's been able to improve their cash flow, the businesses, whether it's from the rock quarries, truck drivers, restaurant owners, motel owners, just a wide variety of different businesses have profited from their stay. Mobile home park owners, RV park owners.
All I've seen locally is someone opened a little RV park that's just kind of gravel, and it was filled for a few weeks, and now it's basically empty again. And a bar opened up next to the pipe yard, or the equipment yard, and I'm wondering if it will survive after they're gone. So the economic benefit to us was temporary, the risk is permanent.
Seems reasonable to me that the most economic and most environmental friendly way to move the kind of gallons of oil that they're going to be moving to produce energy that this nation needs is through a pipeline. So I'm glad they're doing it. It's better than railroading it or trucking it, and we need it.
Well, basically the Midwest is in between Canada and the Gulf of Mexico, and they want to mine it and sell it to the highest bidder in the world. We're just in between ground. Like I've been saying, Canada gets the money, China gets the oil, and we get the oil spills.
And I realize and understand environmentally that there can be issues with that, and that every effort should be made to protect our environment, and that there not be a major trade-off there. But I do see that there is some benefit with that. I personally would prefer not to have pipelines on my property, but at the same time, I see that from a bigger picture that it is going to be a benefit, and I hope and pray that it's a benefit to economic growth and development of our country.
I've put forward in the past an all of the above energy strategy, but our energy strategy must be about more than just producing more oil. And by the way, it's certainly got to be about more than just building one pipeline. Now, I know there's been, for example, a lot of controversy surrounding the proposal to build a pipeline, the Keystone Pipeline, that would carry oil from Canadian tar sands down to refineries in the Gulf. And the State Department is going through the final stages of evaluating the proposal. That's how it's always been done. But I do want to be clear. Allowing the Keystone Pipeline to be built requires a finding that doing so would be in our nation's interest.
The Keystone is the public part of the pipeline. It's the one that everybody talks about and everybody sees, but it's just one of the many pipelines they're putting in. I'm almost to the point where they can stop the Keystone and they're still going to be able to pump all the oil they want, and it's almost like a distraction where we're talking about the Keystone while we're putting all these other pipelines in.
What we're seeing right now is a lot of noise about Keystone XL, but relative silence about the overall network of pipelines that's being built and the utter complete determination of Canadian earth-destroying extraction companies looking for every opportunity they can get to take their tar sands crude and get it to market in Asia.
It's really about the same thing. It carries close to the same amount of tar sands. It's going to be carrying the very same material, and it's going to end up in the same place, which is in Houston, bound for China. And one company, it's just two different companies who are fighting to see who gets tar sands to Houston first.
And I think this is really flying under the radar, unlike the Keystone XL pipeline that gets so much national attention. And this is, it's really happening under people's noses.
We're kind of standing on probably the pipe right now. You see that stake stuck over there? Yeah. So we're kind of standing on this pipe that goes up through there. Well, I plan on and staying here and farming, keeping the farm going and farming for a number of years, and eventually it will be passed on down to my children, and hopefully we'll be able to keep the farm in the family.
I think that's part of it. Yeah, I grew up on a farm. I was involved with farm chores all my life, and as a kid, I think I developed a passion for that, for agriculture, and a passion to be out here on the farm, and that that's what we hope to pass it on to our children, and then they continue the operation.
Well, I was born and raised in this area. I'm raising my family here. I care about the city. I care about the people having clean water, which is essential for a community.
Hello and welcome back to Green Time. I hope you enjoyed that documentary From the Pipeline by Caitlin Zera that shows the challenges created by tar sands oil pipelines through Missouri. The company that built this pipeline, Enbridge, was responsible for a devastating spill on the Kalamazoo River in Michigan in July of 2010 that dumped 1 million gallons into the river. We need President Obama and the Congress to stop these dangerous tar sands pipelines because we depend on the Missouri River for drinking water. See you next week. Thanks for joining us.